Welcome to the Beza Performance live stream. Today, we're talking about net landed profit analytics again with our guest, Richard Sharpe from Competitive Insights. I'm going to bring Richard in and get started here. Thanks for joining us, Richard.
Hey, Marshall. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Good to be here with you. Let's just level set again, folks. The net landed profit analytical approach is what we've been talking about, trying to kind of teach you how to do it with your tools. We're demonstrating it using the CI Competitive Insights tools, but we went through step 1, ready, step 2, aim, step 3, fire. And today we're talking about step 4, measure, which we can also say is about hitting targets. So with that, I'll kick it over to Richard. And Richard, you can talk a little bit more about the steps maybe and kind of tee this up for us.
Absolutely. So thank you, Marshall. Sure. So ready, again, is all about being able to take that native transactional data from every source you have to be able to look at the costs associated with the sourcing of the product all the way to the final end delivery to every customer. To take that information and go through a rigorous process that goes through the validation, including subject matter expert validation, so that the information is right and it is trusted. And that's so important because if that's not true, every time you refresh the data, it's not going to be actionable.
We're going to talk about somebody doing a 40% SKU rationalization. You're not going to do that unless you trust the data.
Oh, absolutely.
I wouldn't put my name on that.
I don't think anybody would unless they want to change their career.
Right.
So, but it's really critical that step is always done every time you refresh the data. Once that's done, though, then the interesting thing is doing that transformation, which is how do we want to look at our organization, not cookie cutter?
Yeah.
How do we want to look at the total cost to serve, transforming that data so that we know the cost for every product, for every customer, for every channel, using that end-to-end supply chain information.
That's step 2. We call that aim, right?
That's right. That's step 2. And then it becomes really critical that that information serves as a foundation for lots of different initiatives. And it's used cross-functionally. And that's why the information supports the enterprise goals, not just the functional goals of a particular part of the organization. Yeah. So, we're going to talk today about, using that for how are we doing as a company in hitting our targets. But as you saw in the last podcast, we showed one example of the use of that information to look at channel and region analysis with regard to the operation itself.
Yeah.
But again, many different modules that can be done there.
Yeah, and we'll do more of those in the future. Today, we'll do a bunch. So just to be clear,
right.
The last live stream we covered fire, and with fire we can look at how do you take the net landed profit analytical approach that's been developed in step 2 and point it at a problem you want to solve. Today is going to be about measure hitting targets.
That's right. That's right. So it's very important that the whole organization has a view of how well things are going based on decisions that they're making using their solution for cost to serve and profit analytics. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about some stuff that's been going on. I think Black & Decker was some news that came out this week, but I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about Coca-Cola in 2020 and their big SKU rationalization. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this was a huge announcement by Coca-Cola.
Right.
They announced they were going to reduce their entire brand portfolio by 50%. And that's a bold move. And they wanted to be able to do that to take out the products that were just not well performing so they could apply those resources to the products that were absolutely going to be the winners for their company.
Right.
And that was an announcement made in July of 2020. And even the analysts were saying, this is really smart. It's going to free up resources, reduce complexity. It's going to be able to look at ways to be able to grow the company a lot smarter. And you can see from Goldman Sachs, they're saying it's only going to reduce top line profit just in the very beginning of that by 1%. So there's a lot of benefits on that. You have the benefits short-term and long-term, Marshall, that are really important to realize. This is not just about SKU rationalization. This is about understanding the ability to react quicker, to be able to plan smarter, to be able to do the things that you want to do that really grow the organization very smartly. And as you said, Black & Decker, just this week announced the same thing. 40% of their portfolio is going to be reduced. And again, I know we're emphasizing SKU reduction and rationalization, but these are just happen to be stories that companies
Yeah.
are doing. But there are a lot of different other stories where this kind of information can be used. It's really, really wonderful to see.
So again, just to be clear with everybody, we're going to be doing lots of step 3 live streams, meaning lots of um, approaches to using net landed profit analytics to solve problems. Today is about once you've taken an analytical approach using the net landed profit information and
Hmm.
fired, you've tried to pick the SKUs you're going to rationalize, you've tried to reduce your risk in your supply chain, you've tried to rationalize your inventory. Then you got to decide whether you
That's
hit the
right.
target or not. And that's what we're going to be going over today with the measure step 4.
That's right. And what's really exciting about that, Marshall, is you're exactly right, just what you said. But what people begin to realize is that in using this information, they may not just hit the target, they may exceed the target. And they're going to go above what they had planned to see in both cost reductions and in the realization of profit. And what better way to be able to handle the inflationary pressures that are going on
Right.
in every company
Yeah.
today to say we're not only hitting these targets, we're exceeding them in a time that's very disruptive.
Well, and I would say 100% of my clients right now are dealing with supply chain disruption, not just in terms of lead times being either extended or unpredictable, but cost variation being, challenging
Oh,
in the supply
absolutely.
chain. So all of that is very, very, powerfully approach using this net landed profit analytical approach. So
So
let's
that's our goal. We hope that everybody that's listening is considering building this,
right.
and that hopefully these podcasts are giving them insights that help them be able to navigate those decisions so they can do exactly what you
Yeah.
said and excel during these very hard times.
So we will be, as I said, in the future, doing some more step 3 stuff and showing people how to craft the analytical, visioning of what you're trying to understand about the data and make those decisions. Make sure you like and subscribe, depending which platform you're on. Maybe like and follow so that you can get those videos. We also do
Mhm.
S&OP, lean thinking, respect for people, part of lean. The one thing that motivates all people, a lot of leadership strategy type stuff. Make sure you're doing that. But back to competitive insights approach to net landed profit analytics with Richard Sharpe. Richard, I'm going to bring up your screen, and that way folks can see the tool that we'll be talking about today. Hand it over to you.
Yep. So the same 4 basic steps, but as you've said, we're going to focus on hitting targets. And one of the things that's really important as you're thinking about this is you want to be able to summarize the information both for the users of your system as well as for the executives. So everybody's on the same page in the progress that's being made, and they have specific details or questions they know they can go back to the users of the system and get more information back in the analytics being used in fire. So we want to serve both the users of the system, and we want to serve the executives of the organization to be able to have that healthy conversation. So let's just go ahead and get right into it, Marshall. So that's what we're going down here. We're doing the hit targets module, and we're going to start off with a summary of how well things are going. Just for orientation, you can see that each of the top blocks on the screen are measuring the performance of this last quarter, but they're also comparing it to the previous quarter and a quarter a year ago. So we want to be able to say, how is this trending, if you will? And that's true for net sales, as you can see there, for net landed cost to serve, remembering that's the total cost to serve for every product, customer, and channel. The net landed profit that's being generated for that quarter versus, again, last quarter versus a year ago. And then the net landed profit margin. And as you've heard several times, most likely your net landed profit margin is going to be considerably lower than your standard margin. And that's true for every company
Right.
pretty much. But you want that snapshot. Okay, so if that top is commenced, let's go down and do a little bit more of a deep dive. So now what we're looking at are specific things that the users of the system are going to be very interested in. And remember, this is a cross-functional utilization. This isn't just supply chain. This is sales, finance,
Mhm.
marketing, etc. So the first thing we're going to look at is profit leakage, which you see is that lower block on the left side of the screen. And what we're doing there is we're looking across all of the performance of the products, and we're saying, are there particular areas where we're leaking profit? So look at sourcing. It's about $500,000. And what we're saying is there is an opportunity for the procurement department to actually look at, and we show them the specific products to look at for specific suppliers to be able to say, these are items that we should be looking at compared to the benchmark performance for the same type of items. And sales, it's not the sales are off necessarily. What that is sales opportunities can be because of chargebacks or discounts or pricing schemes. And so we've got a little over $1 million of opportunity there. But the big one is cross-functional. And what cross-functional is saying is there's not just one driver for the profit leakage. It's going across multiple disciplines. And so there we've got over $6 million of opportunity. So the whole goal is to be able to say there's more opportunity to work with, and that is going to help us be able to not just meet our plan, but exceed our plan. So that's the first one. The second one's really interesting, I think, and that's the cost to serve summary. So look at what the vertical line is showing us is that if you're to the left side of the line, that means a reduction, whatever that area might be. To the right, it means an increase. So what we're seeing on that second block is that the cost to serve for all of the units sold for the company actually went down by 3 cents. That's pretty good. But we remember now our sales were off too, for whatever was the reason for driving sales. But the big one that we see here is the sourcing cost. And that sourcing cost is for 18 cents for every unit sold. There was an opportunity because the costs have gone up so much. 18 cents per unit. Then you go down to the actual transportation. That cost went down, but the working capital, you see what that number, so it's a really good way to be able to reflect on the main categories or drivers associated with the performance that we're seeing up on top. Does that make sense, Marshall?
Sure does. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so quickly then, let's just move over to the right side of this graph of the system. So the first is that we're looking at the performance of products and customers. The first one is product, and we can see that out of all the products, the thousands of products that we're selling, we have 17,000 products that are totally unprofitable. And obviously, the people that have been working on this, day to day, should be aware of that trend, but it's showing this is where we are today with more opportunity to look at. And then you go down to the bottom 4%, that's telling us that 4% of the total profit earned by the company was with a little over 7,000 customers. Excuse me, 7,000 products. And 96% of the profit that was associated with the performance was just over 2,000 products. So that's a really good snapshot to tell us we've got more opportunity here from products. And you can see the same as for customers.
Yeah.
You've got 254 unprofitable customers. You've got 1,100, 1,200 that are marginal, only producing 4% of your
Hmm.
profit. And you've got 37 customers that are giving you 96% of your profit. So it's a great way for the users and the executives to have that snapshot. How well are we doing? And then, of course, as you mentioned about the product rationalization, we're also going to identify products that should be looked at because of this month's performance that say, something's not quite right here. Let's take a quick look at it and see if we can take actionable steps to drive performance that's actually going to be better for the next quarter. Yes, that's
So I
right.
always say, I think most people think they already have this data, but they obviously don't because they don't see that kind of a profile across of profitability across their products and or their
Right.
customers in this case. And I don't know how you get there without using the net landed profit approach. You can't get there with
Yeah.
cost accounting or any of the allocation, methodologies.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think if you're an executive looking at that number saying, well, that sounds like an awful business, it might be your business. You just don't see it that way because you're not using this
Absolutely.
methodology. And so that's, you can look at that as an awful business, or you could look at it as a typical business, which is closer to our experience. And then there's a lot of opportunity in that bottom 4%, which is 1,200 customers versus the top 37 customers that are making you most of your
Right.
profit.
We do this another way
Right.
for some customers where they want to get more granular, and we do it in 20 percentile buckets.
Yes.
But it can be done either way. So that's
Yeah.
absolutely right, Mark. And it is fairly typical. I don't want to say every company has performance like this, but we've
Right.
not really seen anyone that doesn't have something similar to this profile.
Well, I think the one that typically doesn't even show up in a lot of customer profitability analyses, unless you're using this net landed profit approach, is that unprofitable group where you just actually have people that you're losing money by having them as clients. And when we do
Right.
SNOP, Doug Dedman of DBM Systems and I, when we approach people about SNOP, we always are talking about how SNOP forces you to make decisions about allocation, or at least about what are you going to do with your limited supply when demand is exceeding supply, which is exactly what everybody's going through right now. That's what 100% of our clients are dealing with that right now. And a great way
Right.
to do it is by looking at the net landed profit of those clients. How profitable are the clients, and what might we
Right.
change to get them profitable if they're not?
That's right.
You've always the option of not selling to those clients anymore, but that really isn't a solution we see pursued too often. It's more about how do we change terms, how do we reprice, how do we structure kickers
Service
in the
levels.
raw material
Yep.
for the contracts, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, it's all about having the insights that is trusted and repeatable every month, and then making smart decisions. And as you just said, those decisions might be decisions in sales, or they might be supply chain decisions, or they might be finance decisions, or marketing
Yeah.
decisions, or a combination of the above. So you don't want to use a cookie cutter approach where, hey, we've got this number 254 customers that are not performing, we're going to do X. What you want to know is why aren't they performing, and then
Who
create
are
a
they?
strategy to get them to perform
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, and that's in the step 3. When we take the data, today's about step 4, the hitting the targets, but step 3 is about
Yeah,
how do you make those decisions in the first place. And so we said
that's
we'll
right.
do more of those. We will do more of those, but I'll let you
Yeah.
continue with step 4.
So
Sorry to
what
jump all
this
over you.
is, exactly right. What this is a summary of all the actions that are being taken in step 3.
Yeah.
So it gets a little better though, because an executive, their time is very limited. So, what they really want to know in many cases is, are we hitting the plan? And if not, why not? So let's go and look a little bit closer at that and do the executive summary report, which is just from our experience, something that we find is very powerful. And again, keeping everybody on the same page. So we're going to go ahead and look at that really quickly. And so what we have now is we have the actual performance in 3 different categories where we're looking at plan, and we're looking at how well we've done, and then the projections associated with the performance opportunities that are being worked on as to what we could anticipate, given that we continue with the strategies that we're defining based on having the cost and profit analytical information.
Okay.
So we have the first one is net sales versus actual. So you can see that the red is the plan, the blue is the actual performance. So what that means is that we haven't, before we started doing this, we haven't really been hitting our plan on sales. And so what we want to do is obviously change that. And once we start using this analytical information, you can see that the actual projected outcome is actually exceeding the plan. So we're doing better than what we had hoped we'd be doing quarter by quarter or month by month. And that's the same strategy for net landed costs. You can see that, the differences between plan versus actual, and then the projected on that. And, that's really important because it's essential that the companies can know that they're moving to hit the target or to hit or to exceed the target, both in sales and in the cost to serve and in profit. Does that make sense, Marshall?
Sure does. So
Now, one
let me
thing,
just ask us to take a pause here. It's been a little bit since we
yep.
defined what net landed profit is for everybody, and we sort of did it maybe when we described step one, but um, just for folks who might have tuned in late, or what is net landed profit? What is that approach, and what is the data we're looking at here?
Okay, so the approach is that for your particular company, we want to know every cost associated with every product as it's moving end-to-end supply chain. So we don't want to do cost allocations. We don't want to do any peanut butter spread. We want the actual transactions themselves, which is usually about 4 billion
Yeah.
transactions, to be able to know that we're got information that is accurate and specific, and that has been verified every time to give us a very specific and accurate and actionable database. So when we have done that, then what we're doing is we're transforming it, looking at the revenue side for chargebacks, discounts, pricing strategies versus the cost side. And what we can determine from that is we can create the actual operating profit generated for every customer, for every SKU, through every channel, and that information then can be used to do the fire, which are the decisions we're making, and then to see how well we're hitting targets. Does that
Okay.
help, Marshall?
It does. Thanks for doing that. I just always want to remember, maybe not everybody's watched every live stream we've done on this so far. So
Oh, and what I have not mentioned is you can also filter this, in different ways. So you can look
sure.
at this kind of performance by channel. You can look at it for a product hierarchy if you're just interested in shirts or a particular category of product. You can look at it by customer region. So there's multiple ways to look at it because it's important to know how well is the company doing, but it's also important to be able to drill in on specific parts of the company in trying to understand this overall performance. Okay, let's keep going. So we're gonna drill in now on the actual profit. This is really interesting. So now what we see is that as we saw before, that historically we have not really been hitting our targets on profit, and that's a problem, especially in today's world. So what we are doing now is we're starting to integrate the cost to serve and the net landed profit insights that we're getting from our own information the way we want to see it. And what happens is, in many cases, you can actually accelerate meeting your target. And so that's a great thing as you think about, as you said, for an S&OP process or multiple initiatives, knowing that I'm able to leverage this information to do better than what I earlier had expected is a very good thing. And remember that this curve is not just based on, aggregated information. This curve is based on accurate and specific information that has been worked on by the users of the system. And now what we're doing is we're projecting using formulas that, obviously have been reviewed with them to be able to say, hey, you really have an opportunity to really delight your shareholders and do even better.
Yeah,
So
this did
we
not
love
come from
that.
your income statement from your accounting system. This maybe some
No,
of the transactional data came from your accounting system, but not this net landed profit calculation.
that's right.
Yeah.
So it should be encouraging to the companies to know that they can use this information, take action with this information, and drive the performance or exceed the performance that they're expecting for the company.
Good.
So I hope that's helpful for everyone on the podcast.
Yeah.
Marshall, what else can we help people gain from this particular podcast?
Well, I think we've done a good job of kind of showing what a hitting target step would look like. I guess the idea would be, what does the cycle look like? I'll bring the graphic back up. So you've kind of gone through a process of getting your data ready, and you're confident. You've developed your net landed profit. step 2 aim, you then used your analytical approach to identify the actual insights, and then you've seen, as we just saw, whether it worked, whether there was data
Right.
there. Did you hit those targets? So how do you move back through the cycle once you've done that?
Well, I think you have to break that into 2 pieces. One
Okay.
is getting in a position that you can continue to measure performance. So that means that you have, when you're building the system, you've thought through how you want to go through handling all of that data, and not doing peanut butter
Okay.
spread, and being able to have it so everybody trusts it, and then creating that cost to serve and profit model that is specific for your business. Now, everyone's going to do it in a different
Okay.
way. And I can only, say with what we do, and what we do when we're using these tools is a typical uh, opportunity to do that for a company. It can take anywhere from 8 to 14 weeks
Okay.
to be able to go through that, just to get to them, to the initial fire, the initial areas they want to focus on.
First cycle.
What generally
Yeah.
First cycle. What generally happens is they get really excited and they want to start looking at the other modules because there's lots of opportunities, knowing it's the same data, that we don't have to go through a
Right.
reprocessing of the data. We're just using it in a different way.
We've got billions of
Um,
drivers. We just need to be able to look at it, lend the solution a little bit differently in terms of what we're going to try and fix. So we just did a SKU rationalization. Now we want to do an inventory rationalization. That's the idea of
yeah,
the cycle. Okay.
yeah. The way we create the database is we're not reprocessing any data at all. We're just
Sure.
using different parts of the data to be able to focus on whatever is that initiative they want to do. Um, so that's really important because that's very efficient. Obviously, you're not having to scramble. People are not having to say, okay, now for this initiative, I'm going to need 8 more weeks to get the data I need to do it, et cetera, et cetera. It's all right there. It's just
Yeah.
how do you want to use it? To the second part of your question, once you're in a refresh mode and what we call production, then we're receiving that data on an ongoing basis throughout the month. We've agreed with the customer when we're going to actually do the conversion to
Yeah.
the next update. And when we have received all the data, the entire process of validating the data, transforming it for cost to serve and profit, and then creating the updates for the fire and the measurements that we just saw in hitting targets, we can do that in 5 days or less.
Okay. So you have the tools built the right way, which obviously your tools are built for that. Then a week or maybe at most 2 weeks is a pretty reasonable uh, re
Yep.
refire for the data to use it again and make sure
That's
you're in good shape for the next month, whatever changes need to be made.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. And it needs to be that way
Sure.
because it's, again, as you're thinking of building your system, you don't want this legacy or latency if we go with results.
Yeah.
You've made a pricing decision. You want to know as quickly as possible, is that working?
Yeah.
And if not, what else are we going to do? So it's really important that it's timely.
Okay. Well, good. So, as we said earlier, we're going to be doing a lot more live streams with Richard of Competitive Insights to look at net landed profit and specifically how we're going to look to solve certain problems with it. And that's the step 3 fire. We'll have lots of different examples over the next year or so of live streams with Richard. But Richard, I want to thank you for helping us talk about hitting targets today with this approach. And I think we've kind of done the full circle approach now. So now we're going to get into these nitty gritty. What does it look like to fire every time we want to shoot
Absolutely.
this gun at the right problem? So
Absolutely. And Marshall, my sincere desire is that this information is useful. A lot of people are struggling with a lot of different decisions today, and our goal is to support them and serve them to help them not have to think through everything we had to think through as they're
right,
building their solution.
yeah, it took 30 years, and you're a supply chain genius. So maybe we can make it a little easier with folks with the live stream. So
There you
well,
go.
good stuff. Thanks again.
My
We'll
pleasure.
see you in a couple of weeks.
All
Thanks,
right.
Richard.
Thank you.
Folks, don't
Thank
forget to
you.
like and subscribe, whatever platform you're on, like and follow, and you'll be able to catch up with Richard next time. Thank you very much.